The 2nd of June, 2022. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube videos, and go to my website, www.susanmeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. Make sure to check the social media accounts to verify my actual official accounts, because that's extremely important. So today is the 2nd of June 2022. Congratulations to the Queen of England for the Platinum celebrations that occurred recently. And so I'm going to start off with a more positive viewpoint, despite the way things are at this particular point in time. So there is that, as far as that's concerned, regarding the Google News source that had gone over that among a few others. And so today I had a larger headache that turned into a full-blown migraine after having some pizza and a cookie. And so if that just so happens to be anything that would be similar to a different version of Breckenridge or Corona, for those references, there are those factors. And if that's been an issue since my transfer, well then, while I've made attempts to be capable to work on certain things, such as my Medal of Honor art project, well, obviously, when I've explained that prescriptions don't assist me in the correct capacities, except for certain types, such as if I need them for illness, such as, when I was in 5th grade. Well, then that would have been more beneficial in comparison to what I've dealt with in that hypothetical for those particular references to take into consideration. So there is the irony of ironies as to those in the state of Texas. And so from 2000 to 2012-13, obviously, the situations regarding the time frame when I woke up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. Now I know that there are those who have had their issues as to how repetitive I've been, not just in regards to one or two areas of life, or even one or two areas in the state of Texas. That's kind of important though when you really think about it, because at that particular point in time, as many people who have complained about how repetitive I've been, there's this saying, which I do like KMFDM, and I've heard this term beforehand. I've actually said it before. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And so in the modern day book, again, if you go to my website, www.susanmeling.com, there's the books section of my website. And so in the modern day book, I went over several factors regarding my Medal of Honor art project artwork, as well as my Medal of Honor art project trips. And so in that hypothetical of certain individuals that I've gone over, whether you look in reference to my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, through my website, www.susanmeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, and correlate certain things in reference to the modern day book, as well as finding a silver lining and finding the silver lining, hypothetically, in those particular references since my transfer, if there has been any of those situations that occurred in any capacity. Well, I have brought up the situations as to my headaches and migraines, and any situations as to how my plans to work on a few things, which not just that situation regarding the Dr. Mary Edwards Walker collection attached to my Medal of Honor art project. I suppose at this particular point in time, the 2nd of June, that would be in a dual translation regarding attached to my Medal of Honor art project. And so when you read through the modern day book, as well as my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, through my website, www.susanmeling.com, make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel and like my official YouTube videos, or at the very minimum, share the link to my official YouTube videos, because I'm sure there might be some things you might not really like. Though if you do leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect at the very minimum about me. I understand certain other aspects and certain other references in those hypotheticals. So I had seen some pictures of Hillary Clinton more recently. And I hadn't realized if you make Hillary's hair a lighter brunette, she almost, to a degree, looks like my biological mother. It's kind of an irony. And then I was listening to this news report through Fox about Clinton Cash and some deal in reference to a bank. And my biological father talked about when he had invested in gold, as far as that was concerned. Now, I don't know if it's the exact same situation or if it's a metaphor regarding those particular factors, though individuals who I've known in person, face-to-face in person, and or what have you, might be capable to take certain things into consideration, because as I've told people, I was born and raised in New Jersey and grew up going around the tri-state area, which would be New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. And in that time frame, it was before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, because 2000 is the year that occurred. And so in 1998, my biological sister, that's younger than me by 4 years, and I were moved from New Jersey to Illinois. And I didn't want to move. I didn't like the energy as far as it was concerned. There was something about, yes, there were some of the people I could get along with some, but it was really the energy. And most specifically to my issues with the energy was when I got closer to this town called Woodstock. And I didn't know what the problem was for me, because I hadn't ever heard of this. I actually liked the Snoopy Sunday comic strip, so I didn't understand what my issue was, because I really liked Woodstock. I thought Woodstock, the Snoopy character, was so cute. Little birdie. little birdie, so cute. And so I didn't understand. I knew that it wasn't the same, because obviously the town Woodstock in Illinois compared to the little bird in Snoopy was not the same. It didn't make sense to me, although I suppose there might be an irony in reference to a group called They Might Be Giants and Birdhouse in Your Soul. And for those who know, Woodstock, in reference to Snoopy, is a little yellow bird. And my biological mother had tried to tell me that Woodstock, the town, was actually really important, and I didn't understand why. To be honest, to this day, I really still don't understand why, though maybe there are people who can understand as to the reasons why. So I have told people in the state of New Jersey, as well as through my official YouTube video, make sure to subscribe, and other areas such as Illinois, in the Army, in my basic training, as well as in the state of Texas, throughout the state of Texas, before putting it in writing, so on and so forth, about this nightmare I had as a child in 2nd grade. And there were plenty of individuals that really just didn't understand, and usually it was, oh, you're just a child. You're just a child, because I was in 2nd grade. So, you know, it's just a child. You're just in elementary school. What do you know? You're just a child. Stop bad, you're just a child. Well, my biological mother and biological father are Democrats. And they really truthfully liked the Clintons a lot. It's not the exact same, I don't know if officially, but there are certain factors that maybe there are those who have known them who could take that in consideration to review, such as the family my biological sister that's 4 years younger than me married into, the Millers in that capacity. And so, I made attempts to warn people before the year of 2003. So from 2000 to 2003, I made multiple attempts in anywhere I could. It didn't matter if it was the Army or the Air Force. It didn't matter if I was in the civilian sector or the military. It didn't matter. There are these situations and a bunch of people, it's an irony. If you listen to, though, do read the lyrics to New American Century by KMFDM. Go read those lyrics. The song is great. I really actually do like the song as well. But you should read those lyrics because it's kind of a smidgen, a bit much. And so they have been staunch Democrats since well before I was born. I'm a Republican. When I read the definition between Democrat and Republican when I was in elementary school, well, I'll tell you a little story. So one day I was in Asher Holmes Elementary School, and we had to do what is known as current events. So we'd have to bring in the newspaper or clipping or whatever and go over the details in that particular reference and explain our opinion on it. Well, somebody, I can't remember her name, she had a different newspaper than the Asbury Park Press. And I was interested. So we switched. She gave me whatever newspaper she had, and I gave her what I had brought in so we could read through the differences of these newspapers. And I was astonished. I couldn't believe the massive differences to the details. It was kind of frightening. She and I wish I could remember her name, she and I were just completely like, did you see and so we went to lunch that particular year. I think it was when we were either in first or second grade. And at lunch, we were going over the differences to the different newspapers. And I was just, what? Look at this compared to this. And other people, they didn't really pay much attention to her and I going through this because we had, it was first, second grade, so it was as it was. And we were going through these differences. Well, one particular male showed up and he was like, what are you two doing? And he had a couple of guys with him. And so we all sat at this one particular cafeteria table and we were going through all of these different differences between just these two papers, just one section of each of these papers. And we just didn't understand. Well, all of a sudden they started being put on prescriptions because of their different viewpoints as two. And so then, having listened to my biological mother and biological father about the Democratic Party and all this stuff in the state of New Jersey, well, then I asked what the difference was. And so my biological mother said, well, Democrats want everything run by the government. They want every detail of every aspect fully defined, so that way everything is known. What's a Republican? They believe in smaller government. We don't really like that. Who's we, is what I asked. And she said, well, Democrats. Democrats don't like Republicans because Republicans don't like a big government. Democrats do. Democrats want to have every single individual factor defined in every capacity of. And it doesn't matter what it is. Want to know every little detail. Well, that seems a bit nosy. That's what my response was. So I dealt with a few things at that point in time. And then afterwards, then it was informed to me that Democrats were a part of certain things. And then fast forward to Illinois a few years later. But anyway, so I had this issue with that. And I was like, well, so Republicans, they don't really care so much. They don't really care about the definitions as long as people aren't doing certain things. And my biological mother got all upset and was, well, yeah, pretty much. They don't care about they don't need the explanations the way Democrats do. So Republicans just let you live your life and don't involve themselves with certain things. Do they ask? And my biological mother said, sometimes they might. Democrats don't really like when they ask. As a child sitting at the kitchen table, I asked, well, why is it okay for Democrats to want to know all of these different details, but then they don't like it if a Republican asks? And so then I dealt with a few things, like a wooden spoon or what have you. And so, my biological father just lit a cigarette and it was as it was. Nothing new, unfortunately, for my childhood, as it was. And so, as my biological mother then explained, well, Republicans, they think that there's this thing called a republic. And Democrats don't really like that because Democrats need to have everything defined. In a republic, people, they don't have as much government, but then they have all this freedom. Isn't that what the United States of America was founded on? So then my biological mother went on this tirade, and anybody who has met her, you have the knowledge as to how that would be. And then the tears that came because, how could you ever believe? Anybody who's ever met her and dealt with this as far as any question that was outside the normalcy. How could you ever believe that they get the Democrat but they want to know everything? So they seem really nosy. In comparison to just letting people live their lives. It's kind of weird. That's how life is supposed to be. And my biological mother, working in information technology, Prudential, doing engineering in software, goes and says, but if we don't have every detail, what are we supposed to do? Live? It's pretty simple. You could just live, ask a couple questions, make sure you have this understanding, so on and so forth. And instead, well, those who have met my biological mother, you have an idea as to how that goes. If you haven't met my biological mother, there's my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeling.com. Goes over a few things. And so I don't know the specific year when my biological mother and biological father met. I know it was in the 1970s, though. Or 1969, it was around that time frame. And it was as it was regarding that. And so when I was moved with my biological sister, that's 4 years younger than me, out to Illinois, my biological mother was so excited about this Woodstock location. She had told me that there was something that occurred there that was really hush-hush and underground. And maybe, just maybe, if I was good enough, I would be allowed to learn about certain things. And I didn't really understand, but I also really didn't want to know. It seemed like it was something that I just didn't need to know. Not that it didn't seem like it could be interesting. It just was one of those, I don't understand. Why would, and so because in this time frame regarding when I was in elementary school, well, I like Republicans. I like just, for those who remember the election cycles from 2008 into the year of 2016, and being a Republican. So I was a child living in the house at that time. And so this is kind of why, you know, in the DFW area and the Austin area, walking around as yeah, I'm a Republican. I voted for Senator John McCain and Governor Sarah. I'm not really, I know it's Sarah, but I wasn't really offended regarding, because anybody who's met my biological mother, biological father, and or biological sister and heard them complain about me, you probably had quite a few words you got to listen to, and there's my childhood. So, so in basic training, that drill sergeant that may have had an issue believing certain things, I bet he believes certain things now, among a few others. And so those particular situations, as far as any words, as far as descriptions, and because anybody who's dealt with that particular factor, that's how that went. And so, because how dare I think for myself by evaluating the information and researching the situations as to taking into consideration before making a decision in reference to a few things, because what would that translate to other than thinking for myself? How dare I? How dare I? I was actually told that I had the nerve to actually learn things. How dare I? You'd think that would be important. However, and especially with the irony regarding my biological father being really big about education, yeah, I guess, it is as it is. However, my biological mother, she had her opinions as far as that was concerned. So one of their other issues was with the military. They liked local and state law enforcement, because in local and state law enforcement, you can break it down into multiple areas, and instead of cohesive working together, you can just have all these little itty bitty areas, and then because of precinct lines, one police officer can't go in another police officer's truck, because that's just how that goes. And so that's just the way it is. And then if you have more police officer types, then all this other, the best example I can give is, for those who know New York City or certain areas of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and New Jersey, there'd be these guys who'd follow the ping pong ball, and then they'd have the little solo cups, and they'd kind of do this real fast and then pick which one. And that's kind of the way it was explained to me within like real words compared to that metaphor as to law enforcement regarding the Democrats. Because if it's done that way, then you can do all this other stuff in comparison to what would actually be necessary. So about a week and a half ago, there's the Uvalde, Texas situation, and there's all of these combined factors to take in consideration in comparison. And so I made all these attempts throughout the years of my childhood, my teenage years, and biological adult years, and each and every time I dealt with people who had repeated words that my biological mother and or my biological father and or my biological sister, again 4 years younger than me, that they had their opinions because they thought that they knew better in comparison. So when it came time in reference to the year of 1999, I had a recruiter that was in the Crystal Lake South High School. It was in the gymnasium. And he had, the typical pamphlets and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. And so I was ready to go. I was going to graduate a semester early. I'd already spoken with the guidance counselor. When the guidance counselor was supposed to actually go over education and your actual graduation plan in comparison to whatever guidance counselors do now. And so, because there's McCoy Elementary School as far as Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. And so I had done everything I could. And when my application was initially sent through, even though I was 17 years old at the time, the recruiter was really surprised regarding the paperwork that came back as far as the facsimile, because it was a swift response. So I don't know what normal response time is for a facsimile being sent through and then receiving a response. However, when he sent it through while we were in the recruiter office near Cub Foods, if I remember correctly, while we were talking, and just before we were going to go step outside and I was going to have a cigarette while we talked, the facsimile said it had an incoming message. And it was maybe 10-15 minutes before the facsimile came through. And that particular recruiter, well, he was quiet for a minute. And he had said, you know what, Susan, go outside and smoke because I need to look this over. Oh, okay. That's fine. Sure, hurry, whatever. Is there anything wrong? And he said, I just need to look this over. Did I do anything wrong? And he said, no, you didn't. Okay. Went outside, had no idea what it had to do with. Smoked about like 3 or 4 cigarettes because it was one of those, it's a little nerve-wracking as far as that was concerned. I went back inside because he hadn't come back outside, and he was talking with the master sergeant in his private office, which was where the facsimile had been in the area. It was in the corner. So when you walked into the master sergeant's office, you had a few feet before his desk and stuff like that. To the right side corner was where the facsimile machine was. And so walked in and, hi, what's going on? So I've explained to people and described the situation in reference to at the recruiter station. And so the master sergeant looked at me and he got up and walked out of his office. I can't remember the recruiter who had been at Crystal Lake South as well as holding the paper from the facsimile. And the master sergeant said, well, let's go outside. You want to smoke another cigarette? Oh, you don't have to twist my arm. That's not a problem. Let's go, guys. And so we went outside, and there was the Navy as well as the Marines, and I explained this regarding the different factors. And the master sergeant just kind of stood there, and he was just like, so enlisted instead. And so I had also explained Marine and Science Technology School as to my invitation, and how, I was upset that I didn't get to go into Marine and Science Technology School, how I had been put in St. John Vianney High School instead, and the Marine had brought up, well, we don't have this, we do this, and you're only a Marine if you graduate basic training, that whole kit and caboodle. So I took that viewpoint and I said, I'll do that depending on certain things as far as whatever. I'm not gonna not do that, I am gonna keep that in mind. And so there was a few other factors that had occurred during that time frame, and it went the way it did. Obviously, this is the year of 2022. Compares it to that year in 1999. And so the situations went the way they did regarding my biological mother, biological father, biological sister that's 4 years younger than me, and so on and so forth. And the recruiter was infuriated. So by the time of around February to March of 2000, the recruiter had asked me several questions that were not on the piece of paper as far as the normal questionnaire. And I explained my childhood because he wanted to know what I had dealt with in New Jersey. Didn't really bring up more about Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment, though had a few other questions such as the movies and stuff that I had been allowed to see in comparison to what was at the time, if I had grown up with cable television, and which I didn't, and so on and so a bunch of other factors. My biological mother, as a quick side note compared to the recruiter, had informed me that Woodstock had so many magical memories that it reminded her of Fantasia. And it was, I don't like that movie. I don't like that movie at all. I don't like Fantasia. It's a bad movie. It's a bad movie. It's such a bad movie. I don't like Fantasia. It's such a bad movie. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know how they came up with it. I don't understand. Well, my biological mother, she went on how she liked the movie Fantasia and all these other situations and so on and so forth. And I don't know, what does that have to do with anything? And she, was like, well, look at this Woodstock, Illinois area. It has all this. Don't you see why you shouldn't do certain things? No, I don't. I see why I should go in the military. I see why it's important. And so, I dealt with a few things in regards of Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. Congratulations again, Admiral, regarding the first female admiral in the Coast Guard, which apparently is the first female in regards of the 5 different branches in the Armed Forces of the United States of America from a news report regarding between the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and Navy. Congratulations. And so, she had discussed this aspect of something that was really groovy or something, which then I just think of a record because I grew up with a record player. It's like, I don't understand that whatsoever. Why? She just had this trip down memory lane, I suppose. And why are you yourself? How messed up are you? I know I can make the joke about that. I know what my childhood and my teenage years and my biological adult years are. And so I can actually make that joke, although it's not really a joke because there's always truth behind every joke. And so it was as it was. And so she went on about something in regards of there was some underground discussions and they'd meet for something and they were inspired by somebody in reference to the Vietnam War. And she had this feathery type of hair. I don't really understand why she was telling me about it, but it was in reference to because of how much I kept fighting to go in reference to mast with the Navy attachment, and then at that point in regards of the Army. because of graduating early, not wanting to be in college or anything like that, only in college if I needed certain things to progress my career, because I didn't want to go as an officer and all these other factors. Because at the minimum, when it came to mast with the Navy attachment, the school for officers, you already have that starting point in comparison to the way certain other factors go. So when you earn it a certain way, there's the automatic respect because it's earned. And while yes, there are situations where you do earn it, it is known, as certain individuals know, certain levels of ease in comparison to other factors. Not that it should be that difficult at all. It is a reality, though, that when you have certain situations and you step forward in a specific way, despite the hurdles, despite the obstacles, despite the situations, to rise up in the ranks, it's a different situation when it's looked at. And so my biological mother went on about this, some female, she was really famous, and she took a stand. She had been somewhere and there was an issue because she didn't, and others in this reference, didn't want people left behind because of the situations regarding the Vietnam War. And I didn't really understand at all. It was one of those, well, I can know and understand that sometimes it's difficult to get certain things taken care of because of the reality in certain references. However, that has nothing to do with my military career choices. And the explanation was, yeah, but since you want to have to go in the military, I'm explaining to you, anybody who's ever had those types of discussions where she does, and if you would just take into consideration as to how these things actually go in the real world compared to what you seem to think, as far as there's anybody who knows. And so, yeah, that's my childhood, so don't be jealous. I've told people there's nothing to be jealous of. I promise, there's nothing to be jealous of my childhood at all. Nope, no. You could be, oh, well, that'd be cool or whatever. No, you just don't want the whole experience regarding the situations in reference to my childhood. Teenage years in total. Nonetheless. It went the way it did. And so my biological mother had brought up all these memories. I suppose she kept relating them to this Fantasia movie from Disney, which again, I just personally couldn't ever understand the Fantasia movie while we're walking around Woodstock, Illinois. And I just really don't understand what this has to do with anything. And so whether or not some people really have had accepted regarding the truth I had informed them of, this underground something another that my biological mother and biological father had been so proud of. I don't really see why. Personal opinion, because I've been a smidgen supportive as far as the military is concerned. And what she was describing, it didn't really come across as supportive of the military as much. And so she talked about some female, she looked so amazing with her feathered hair, and how, sometimes it was up in a ponytail, sometimes it was whatever, but she had the perfect backdrop. And it just was so amazing, so inspiring as to how she took a stand against the situations that were occurring in comparison, and I didn't understand what that had to do with my choice for my life regarding the military. And so she went on all these different viewpoints at that particular point in time, and it was just, but I had a nightmare. It's not a phase. I'm going to go and do this. And so yes, I know as a biological adult, the year 2022, it's weird to acknowledge that. I knew that back when I was a child and a teenager, that it came across as weird. And yet at the same time, it really didn't matter, because I knew that it was visionary. I knew that in later terms, the words are considered prophetic or sight in those references. And I knew the risk I was taking by acknowledging that going into the military, whether in reference to the invitation to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment, same thing regarding the Army, just seemed weird, though I was correct, obviously. And so while I could only do so much in comparison to the time frame, it's what I could do in comparison to the time frame. And so again, my biological mother informed me she knew an entire floor of people that had survived the World Trade Center Twin Tower aspect, because they had a floor in one of the Twin Towers where the entire floor of people, and anybody who remembers the Twin Towers, and it also, yes, it does depend on which part of the World Trade Center and World Trade Center Plaza that particular references, because those who are from the area, knew the area, had certain, you wouldn't have to have the similarities as I had regarding my babysitter's husband, Joe Jose, in reference to the director of security of the World Trade Center and World Trade Center Plaza. You wouldn't have to have that if you knew people or were in the area, so on and so forth. And so there's more than one set of Twin Towers. It was arranged that way for security. So depending on which part of New York City where you lived, you could say you worked at the Twin Towers and it didn't matter, because there were so many Twin Towers. So unless you knew which specific tower of which Twin Towers you had someone working in, that's why it's the World Trade Center Plaza, not just the World Trade Center. And so it's a lot of buildings. And while in regards of the attacks on 11 September 2001, or what's more commonly known as 9/11, the Silver buildings, that's not the only Twin Towers to the World Trade Center or the World Trade Center Plaza. There are multiple towers. There's also towers that were a part of the World Trade Center and or World Trade Center Plaza that weren't Twin Towers. They had standalones or watchtower sort of situations as far as that was concerned. And so it was an extremely intricate area, how it was designed. It wasn't just what you see as far as some of the skyline aspects, because even in, and I'm gonna guesstimate this, even if you were to see older movies and or television shows that had the camera view of the Twin Tower, or New York City skyline, I should say more specifically. If you were to have that, I would guesstimate you would actually have to take multiple videos of those viewpoints, and you would see differences per area. It would be almost like, so I gave this reference regarding the viewpoint when on the 11th of September 2001, where my nightmare and reality kind of blurred together, and so I could see both at the same time. So it wasn't like a puzzle, though it was kind of like a blending. And so those who understand lithographs and how lithographs are, there, I would guesstimate if you were to take different television shows and or movies, because of the way the laws were in New York City as to those factors, because mainly Hollywood would know these situations. You'd have to have permissions from different owners of these different buildings because of licensing and copyrights and so on and so forth. And so if you were to do that, I would guesstimate, for lack of a better word, of lithographing, where you kind of do that, and so you have that view in comparison. That would be more along the lines of the actual New York City skyline. As to the earlier developments of Photoshop, or what is called Photoshop now. And because for those who know these particular laws or variations of, and they're more specific in the Democrat-run areas, such as the 5 boroughs of New York City, such as, well, I'm going to guesstimate Hollywood in reference to California. So in comparison to when you're on the ground and just, you know, standing around or walking in the street or inside one area, it's not considered the same as a panoramic sky view. And so that airspace, as far as those legalities, especially someplace such as New York City, has all those particular factors to take in consideration. And so I've been, in my official YouTube videos, especially since my transfer and having acknowledged, been up to the New Jersey area, and for the first time specifically for the evening skyline, because anybody who's actually seen the evening skyline in person, that is very different than seeing the New York City skyline through a video or movie or what have you. It is extremely different to see it in person, standing on the ground. And so my area that I personally would recognize more so, because anybody who remembers the traffic to go into the Holland Tunnel and or out of the Holland Tunnel in New Jersey to New York City knows how that traffic can be. And so all of the twinkling lights in reference to the New York City skyline, the 1980s and 1990s. And so those particular factors. And so in February of 2022, well, it's the first time I see that New York City skyline from the Liberty Science Center. So much shorter. All of the buildings, they're so much shorter than what they were. The Liberty Science Center building is the same height. I remember it. I know I'm taller in comparison, though I had sat in a bus as well as in an 86 Dodge Grand Caravan, and so the height difference of the seats to my size as a biological adult, there's that kind of viewpoint. I don't know what the definition of the words would be for the sight to see. And so I know that maybe there's an extra floor or two that they added on top of, or something that they, because of, but that would still be shorter than all of the towers that would be in the area of New York City from that viewpoint. And I know there's the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2011. Haven't denied that. That's true. That is true. I haven't denied the after effects of my head injury. Not just my headaches and migraines, more along the lines of having acknowledged my memory deficits and cognitive disorders. I've had this sensation since being in medical hold unit, before the Raven Bracket Ridge, before how I wound up off the Fort Sam Houston, in regards of justice of the peace and those references. Before then, I acknowledged it after then, regarding when in medical hold unit, I told them the words that the neurologists and the neuropsychologists and the cognitive therapy something another, as far as, because that's all I could remember. And I had to really work to be capable to remember, and the irony of memory and remember. And so after being in the civilian sector, not only did I work as best as I could to better myself, though also be honest, as I had been. And so when I had explained to people, I knew that it was risky for me to acknowledge it, but it was no different than my childhood. Being a child and telling people that I had a nightmare, or telling people I had a vision, or telling people as far as Old Tenet Presbyterian Church and the situations regarding Pastor William Tennant in the basement or the cellar aspects, it's no different. And that's C, not S. C-E-L-L-A-R. Huge difference in the words. And so it was as it was regarding the truth in those factors. Now, in regards of my scuba diving, how I earned 26 scuba diving certifications, and those particular factors as to the hypothetical that they spoke with people that were as they were, and I had already warned them. I'd already warned in regards to, by the time of 2009, I had warned people about what I was dealing with in reference to my biological father, as far as mother, biological father, since the 1980s, into the 1990s, and then 2000s. So I had been giving warnings about what I was dealing with just in reference to my biological mother and biological father for 2.5 decades, essentially. And in that reference of the KMFDM song, New American Century, the world's watching in disbelief, chanting, shame on you. How can you stand by so quietly? As far as that's concerned. And then the irony, I suppose, referencing the civilian recreational scuba sector. Because if they believed my biological sister, who's 4 years younger than I am, which they'd have to think about that, because why would my biological sister, who's 4 years younger, ever know about my childhood? That would be ignorant to think that my biological sister, that's 4 years younger than me. So not only did she not have any memories before the year of 1990, 1991, so that's the whole time of the 1980s that she doesn't know anything about my childhood. It's a whole 1980s that she has no understanding or knowledge to give anybody except for what she's told by my biological mother and biological father. Talk about disinformation as far as that's concerned. And then anybody who has a sibling knows how that goes. There's a smidgen of a bias as far as that's concerned, to a degree. And so her first memories that she had told me that she had of me personally in her life, she had figured it hadn't been till around 1994 or 1995. What would anybody be allowed, if they have intelligence, to ever ask my biological sister about me? That's 4 years younger than I am. That's kind of a level of lack of intelligence when you really think about it. I mean, would you really need a college degree to figure that out? I knew this before I went in the Army, as far as that was concerned. I knew this after I woke up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. Obviously, this year of 2022, I've known this. She had, similar to certain aspects, technology from the start. Well, those screams. In the 1980s, I had done a current events news situation because I also had listened to the news. And I had done some extra research where I could about these video games during the time frame. And the video games were causing epileptic seizures to a lot of children in the United States of America because of the flickering lights. And so there were certain other factors to take in consideration. So I brought this forward, and in Asher Holmes Elementary School, I dealt with a lot of people who were upset that I had the nerve to say anything bad about video games. And I explained I wasn't saying anything bad about video games. I was giving a warning because I was reading some of the information. So I gave warnings about millennials. And so they didn't seem to understand that the situations about these video games had to do with some of the, I don't know what it's called, but it's almost like a hypnosis, in my opinion, for lack of a better word. And so while some people were extremely upset, how dare I even make mention of that? I dealt with that at school, as far as I was concerned. So you have the Uvalde, Texas situation. You also have apparently a few shootings in Oklahoma. I believe it's Tulsa. And so there are those factors as to taking in consideration these realities. So in reference to prescriptions, whether by choice of taking these prescriptions or in reference to such as Brackenridge and Corona, regarding that in that hypothetical. So those references as to how these, you can even reference to President Ronald Reagan, how he had started with the war on drugs. Now I read that he had been in the Hollywood sector before getting into politics or elected official stuff. And he had said that it was a war on drugs because of certain things, so I can't remember what specifically. So I don't know about pop culture. I don't know about anything in reference to any actor or actress, not the way that most people have. So I know that my biological mother went on about this female who had some influence regarding the Vietnam War and the American general public viewpoint and all these other factors. I don't know what President Ronald Reagan referred to as far as if he had, I wouldn't know any experience regarding the aspects as to the California situations and that rainbow myriad of different factors to take in consideration that would possibly align to President Ronald Reagan's speech about the war on drugs, and just say no. As far as, because if it has to do with what's considered prescription medications, well, I've brought that up regarding how these anti-headache medications, they literally have side effects of possibly can cause headaches and or migraines. And then these anti-migraine medications side effects may include headaches or migraines. So then there's the antidepressant medications. Well, if you have these tendencies, make sure to go contact a medical professional. So let me understand this correctly. These antidepressant or anti-anger medications, if you have issues, you gotta call what? How about you just treat the root situation? In comparison to pretending that this mask works as far as these prescriptions. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And to anybody such as myself that refuses the prescription aspects, well, there's a legal definition that would align to Breckenridge Corona as to those references in that hypothetical regarding my Medal of Honor art project stuff. And so while I very much wanted to do things a certain way, I even contacted a specific senator as to the particulars of. However, because of my pain levels, having been elevated, even though I've dealt with certain other things, and yes, I acknowledge there's the issues in reference to my teeth, well, there are those factors as to the Mason-Dixon line area. And that Mason-Dixon line area as to the situations that in this hypothetical, where I've already given the warnings, the modern day book, you have that clarification on my website, www.susanmeadling.com, where you can go to the books section. The same thing in reference to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA. And you know, what is the saying for a particular state? And which particular symbol is the Medal of Honor in regards of? So in that hypothetical, in any references to those particular factors, I've been doing what I could to not only recover regarding after having gone out to see the evening skyline of the New York City skyline area, first time since the year 1998, in conjunction with all these other factors. I've explained that prescription anti-headache medications don't assist me. They make my pain levels worse. Anti-migraine medications don't assist me. They make my headaches and migraines worse. I have gone over that time and time again. And yet, in that hypothetical, so then in the reference of how long did it take for the transfer and where is the base unit as to the particular company regarding the apartment transfer. So, you know, no one has any right to complain in regards of how much I have had to take care of on my own without any actual assistance. Because if anyone actually thinks, since the year of 2000 into the year 2022, that they know better about my headaches and my migraines than I do, I don't know what lack of common sense you would have to have for that. Because even if you were a doctor back in the year 2000, I didn't talk about it unless I was at an appointment. I may here and there have brought up additional pain factors, but I didn't talk about it. Because you know, when you have headaches, and depending on the pain level, I don't know what common sense you gotta have for this. But when you have pain in reference to headaches and or migraines, probably not gonna do much talking about it, especially if you have a military background. Sure, I didn't graduate basic training. I also am not a pansy regarding certain types of people. You know, the ones that whine and complain at every little chance that they can. You know, oh, it was so difficult to just look at whatever in comparison to actually doing anything about it correctly. So I suppose there's a bit of an irony. So I had stopped back in the state of Texas, 2019 through 2021. And I had only seen a few people that I'd once known. And I had sent the original, before the situations with the Library of Congress, because there were a few times I had to submit the copyrights. So I had sent the original out to a few people, over 50 to be specific, as far as finding a silver lining. And then because of other situations, it went the way it did. And so there's the original as to the Library of Congress original, and then because of the situations as to the Library of Congress in the year 2014, as to that, there are about 50 to 75 individuals who have the original. Though there is the fact as to the USPS service, so those copies that were hypothetically, because as you would know, regarding getting mail. And so in this reference, there's the irony of the Android company Samsung. So I was in contact with a few people regarding in the year of 2019 and then 2020. So in 2019, there were two people that I had known in what's supposed to be considered the consenting adult lifestyle who had not really told me anything about anything at all during that time frame between 2013 to 2019. Yet there were the connective factors of. Though anybody who knows as far as my modeling is concerned, if you need to, there's the modeling page on my website, www.susanmeling.com. Also the same as www.ladydorybell.com, and you can take a look at that. As far as which one would be in reference to Samsung, right? In that hypothetical. So in 2020, I had attended two events, and at one of them, one individual had informed me that there was a lot of stuff that had happened 5 years before. I don't know what happened 5 years before. I was in Washington State at the time. Nobody contacted me. Nobody informed me of anything. Nobody asked me. I don't know what that referred to, and having seen some people, nobody updated me as to anything that occurred. And that's kind of the facts in that reference. So if anybody wished in regards of, because I had already been accused of outing people in 2011, and I already had been dealing with since the year 2004, as far as already having been outed. So I wouldn't do that to someone in that reference as to those factors. I've also done all those updates to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeling.com. I've explained these particular situations throughout my journal blogs. And so if in that similarity, though, see, this is the problem to that, when you use someone else as a scapegoat and you already know what's going on in their lives, that's a problem. I already grew up with that. I didn't need that any further as to those factors. And so it's the reality. So I did see one photographer, once his name being Sam. And so, that's just an irony regarding that particular factor as to any hypotheticals and or connections in reference to my biological mother and or my biological father and or my biological sister and or my ex-in-laws and or anybody I once knew in person, face-to-face in person, which each of those individuals that had ever outed me, well, they can take accountability as to their stupidity for their responsibility to such choices that they made on their own regarding not just me, those others as well. My opinion. And so that's all before the Geek Squad sort of stuff, obviously. And the fact that I had, especially in regards to, there'd be 3 individuals who would know where my usual office was. Well, actually, I should say 5 in main aspects. 5 people in main aspects that knew where my office was regarding where I was living. So my house, or I guess I can't count that high. So in my house in San Antonio, the backyard patio, that's my office area, because I could smoke my cigarettes and I could just be outside, as far as my son and my daughter can go play in the backyard and have fun while I took care of whatever work I was working on in comparison. Same thing in reference to my house in San Antonio to my house in Carrollton. So there's those factors. So you got the 4 uninvited, or I should say 3 uninvited teenagers, as well as my biological sister, as far as that knowledge. You know, those uninvited teenagers to my property, and then the legal aspects as to the state of Texas stand your ground laws, as to my right to protect my property, myself, my son, my daughter, and all that, my rights. In comparison to them, they don't have any rights to that. And so those situations, as far as those 3 uninvited individuals, as well as my biological sister, uninvited as well, because I didn't actually invite her to my house. My biological mother and biological father asked me to babysit her. That's why legal guardian, as well as the one and only sponsor, by the way. And so that uninvited 4 teenagers to my house and my property, I did not invite them. There's a difference. They might think otherwise. The facts are as the facts are. So then there's Cactus Jack and that situation as to that knowledge, who would know that was where my office always was. And so then there's Sean Leonard regarding that, and then the same in regards to Sean McCall, as far as my house in Carrollton, as to my office area, as well as any of those nosy neighbors that were, you know, doing the homeowners association garbage when they didn't live in a homeowners association situations. And then there were the factors as to, you know, Patrick Kennedy. He knew as far as my office being the back patio, both apartments. So common sense in reference to San Antonio regarding the townhouse I had, where would my office be, as common sense would dictate, would be the back patio. For those of you who'd be listening and watching. And so those particular factors, as well as those uninvited situations regarding my scuba diving after the year 2009, where all that needed to be done was ask me. That's kind of the big problem every time. All that has ever had to be done was ask me with etiquette and respect. Because otherwise, you're not invited. And that's not etiquette. And that's not respect. So, going to the facts as to the 70th platinum anniversary to the Queen of England. Well, they know a smidgen about etiquette and mandatory protocol, where in my opinion, and it is proven regarding history, especially when you take in consideration as to not just the dominant mentor program as far as having learned certain situations. A lot of leather, East Coast leather, is very similar to British customs and or certain levels of more so Cantonese customs as to how certain things are done. And so you get permission from only, regarding my Medal of Honor Art project, you only got one person to ask, to discuss with. And so similar to how you can hear the words coming out of my mouth for this official YouTube video of mine, make sure to subscribe, share the link, and like my official YouTube videos. Go to my website, www.susaneling.com. So similar how you can see my mouth moving, hear the words coming out of my mouth, if in person, face-to-face in person, that's how that's a discussion, so that's etiquette. Regarding, going over details. Similarly, if you read the modern day book, again, you can find the link through my book section on my website, www.susaneling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. You have the capacity for that. So etiquette in the FetLife area on the internet of social media. I had a lot of issues with people in the Austin area. You can see the remnants as to my responses for some, though I remember quite a few more responses. Anybody who's ever been on FetLife during the years of 2010 through 2012 especially, well, you have the idea. For those who haven't, there's leatherati as far as that's concerned as to etiquette and that writing. Don't know what happened in regards to the rest of those particular responses. However, I'm sure it is as it is to be capable to be found as far as that's concerned. And so etiquette in regards of, I know that there are some people that they were taught, well, you don't ask if you're not invited. Well, that does not translate to you go and harass through stalking, because that's still the same thing where you're not invited when you do it that way, in reference to my Medal of Honor Art Project trips. So it's actually etiquette to ask. I know that over the years and decades, how do you handle that? And that is before technology, of course. So then it's just as simple as asking with etiquette. So etiquette when asking, you use your manners. You use the words please, as in P-L-E-A-S-E, such as P as in Papa, L as in Lima, E as in Echo, A as in Alpha, S as in Sierra, E as in Echo. And then, you can interchange the words can and may. So can I or may I in reference to the question, and then, or start out with please, or in correct grammatical ways, it would be can I, in whatever question as far as, and then at the end, please. And then you can have a discussion as to etiquette. Or may I, explanation of please. It's a starting point. Because there's no etiquette just doing things other ways. That's not showing respect to my Medal of Honor Art Project trips or anything like that. And while some people might think otherwise, no, it's not, because of the work that it takes to just do the planning in comparison. And so while some people might have thought whatever they have thought regarding my Medal of Honor Art Project artwork compared to my Medal of Honor Art Project trips, It's a lot of difference. I have to be capable to, drive. It's one thing. I also have to be capable to have the knowledge to pack all the correct items and be organized and all that sort of stuff. And people involving themselves without ever asking me in that audible way, in person, face-to-face in person, regarding before the modern day book, as far as those descriptions and or the ornery PSA, my journal blog on my website, www.susanelink.com. Yes, there are ways around that. There's contacting me directly through my to contact form on my website, www.susanelink.com. There is that. I haven't ever received any messages about my Medal of Honor art project. And so because I haven't received any questions about my Medal of Honor art project, that's that. Now, while in another way, which is not in reference to my Medal of Honor art project, regarding someone from Houston that has nothing to do with my Medal of Honor art project at all. So while some people might think whatever, my Medal of Honor art project artwork, as you can see, is charity in comparison to what other people might have thought. And so there's also a process in comparison to what other people might have thought when it comes to my Medal of Honor art project artwork. So that sort of assumption requires actual discussions. And so since I wasn't in the state of Texas, there was no way to have a discussion regarding that. And so I was for a brief amount of time, and unlike some people, there's other things that are involved as to the actualities of. And so while some people may think whatever they might think, as far as whatever levels of, in comparison to what's actually important to me, those types that have to learn how to deal with reality. Going back to that Uvalde, Texas situation, among a few other factors, those types that have to deal with reality before actually going into certain other situations. So, I actually know my work and how to do my work. And so in that reference of why would I believe that somebody from the state of Texas, after what I dealt with from 2000 to 2013, why would I ever believe that there would ever be etiquette, respect to my work regarding my Medal of Honor art project? As to those factors. Just had to get something to drink right quick. So, since the experiences I already had in the state of Texas at that point in time, it's also important to take that in consideration as far as that's concerned. Instead of assuming, because while I understand grief of one person, compared to the 1980s and 1990s, as to the people I personally lost, I learned how to deal with that early on. So, I have certain other viewpoints in comparison to certain other individuals as to what they might think of themselves in comparison. hypothetically. And so my work in comparison to what other people might think without having that discussion with me in etiquette and respect, well, then there's what happened during my Medal of Honor art project trips. I don't see that as etiquette, nor do I see that as respect, obviously. Because if it was actual etiquette and respect, there would have been the discussions beforehand. Comparison, with me. Other people, that doesn't matter. They don't have that capacity because it's not their work, it's my work. So they don't actually have the rights. It's not freedom of expression. It's not that at all. In any capacity. It's mine. And if it wasn't known that I'm an ordained reverend, that's not my problem either. That's theirs, as far as that's concerned. And so being a mom at the same time, additionally, so then there's that as far as common sense factors. And so in that comparison, well, obviously, why would I ever view any etiquette or respect in that regard, as far as that's concerned, especially from those Texas individuals, after everything that I had dealt with already, because of various areas throughout the state of Texas, such as San Antonio and DFW and Austin, before the year of 2013. What would there ever be that I could ever look at that was ever in etiquette or respect throughout the entire time of 2000 through 2013 that I could actually see where there was ever any etiquette or respect in regards of the state of Texas individuals from 2000 to 2013? What would there be that I could actually see any etiquette or respect from any of those individuals throughout the state of Texas regarding me? The answer for this sermon, monologue, lecture is there's nothing at all. From 2000 through 2013. More so though, specifically from 2003 to 2013. So there's nothing at all. I had some situations that were good here and there. I don't deny that. However, there's not real aspects of that when it comes to what I consider etiquette, what I consider respect. And since it's below the Mason-Dixon line, as far as that is concerned, well, you know what the irony is about a star? How many letters of A can be made with a star? So there's the Lone Star State. As far as that's concerned, there's a whole bunch of A's that can be made with the shape of a star, now isn't there? As you know, in the year of 2022, realizing that. And so, the scuba diving situation, as far as my work, well, there wasn't any etiquette or respect in reference to my work regarding me, because that would require asking me what that would be. Similarly to a lot of other factors. So if other people who didn't have any right to speak on my behalf ever from the time frame of 2000 onward, being the one and only sponsor, you had no one to ask except for me. And that's it regarding how that's concerned. You had no right to ask International Scuba in regards of how to actually do so correctly for my work to be recognized. You didn't have that right because it's my work. You had no right to ask my biological mother, nor any right to ask my biological father, nor any right to ask my biological sister about my scuba diving work. You had no right to ask my ex-in-laws. You had no right to ask my son, and you had no right to ask my daughter about how that goes regarding my work. Scuba diving. There's only one person to ask. Similarly, regarding my Medal of Honor art project, trips and artwork, there's just one person to ask. Reference to my books, there's only one person to ask. And that one person is me. And there is not anybody that has ever asked me, utilizing audible words where this is the example, while some might wish prayer would work in regards of when you could actually do things correctly in comparison. So, that hasn't been done. Not reference at all. And so there hasn't been anybody to ask except me. And nobody has done. Similarly, regarding McCoy Elementary School and the Fort Worth Zoo and CFBISD, I've already updated in reference my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, since the year 2019 through especially to the year 2021, only one person to ask, and that one person to ask about my work is me. No one else, as far as what I put together. I know that there have been some collaborations. However, in reference to my work, there's only one person to ask about my work, and that would be me. It's not selfish. It's just the facts. It's common sense. You don't even need to go to college to learn that or figure that out. And so while some people might have thought they had a right to speak on my behalf because they would mistake those constitutional rights, well, no, you don't have the right to speak on my behalf because that's considered lying and bearing false witness as well as false testimony. That's the definition. In comparison. So, I've brought that up as a few times. So, in regards of English etiquette, it's irony, me-ling, how you spell. So, my version of English etiquette in language, my individual, non-negotiable during this generation that has spent as much time on technology in comparison to actual social skills, in person, face-to-face, in person, in comparison to social media, which when there are classes for social media skills in comparison to in-person, face-to-face, in-person social skills, there are those factors to take in consideration because of etiquette standards. So, that's a reality. So if in reference to taking a look as to appropriate attire in regards of the reference to the platinum anniversary. Now I know there are those in the South who have had a problem with how I physically look because of my hair, my tattoos, I would guesstimate by English etiquette standards, despite my tattoos and my hair, my outfit would be appropriate for etiquette standards. It might not be as pretty as, certain types with their viewpoints, probably similar regarding my biological mother and those particular Woodstock, what have you, Illinois situations regarding those annoyances as to those individuals, especially after the time frame of 2001, as to how many people, ironically in the civilian sector, as to their choices regarding active duty National Guard reservists and veterans, even dependents, which I had dealt with even in the year 2000, obviously. And then as you've seen throughout the time frame since, how many wishful loopholes to prevent children. So that recruiter who had said that he had noticed certain problems specifically in Illinois, he didn't know where it stemmed from. He didn't bring up the area regarding my biological mother as far as the government center that she had worked at in Woodstock, Illinois. He didn't know where McHenry County Government Center was. I don't know if the Woodstock part would have made sense in certain references to him at that time or even now. However, he had brought up, as well as a master sergeant or an E7, if I remember correctly, and then a few others, not the individual who had his name on my paperwork. He was not involved with those discussions as to those references. That was a set of discussions that occurred when we went on walks, as well as in the master sergeant's office, comparison to the general area. And so that particular set of situations. So I don't know how many, though that recruiter who was actually my recruiter in comparison to the individual who took me to the MEP station and then my paperwork regarding that, the recruiter I had met in the gymnasium at Crystal Lake South High School, he had brought up that there were certain problems regarding usually females as to, I can't remember his name, I think his name was Scott, and he dated a female named Teresa. He got her a promise ring, if I remember, at Crystal Lake South. He had brought up that his mom was infuriated that he had to sign paperwork regarding the draft because of him being 18 years old. And I had told him, I don't understand why it's not across the board as far as all people. And he had to explain to others in high school, because he was one of the older students, as to the situation. It might not have been Scott, it might have been Thomas, I can't remember what his name was to be specific, but he was a lighter brunette. And a bunch of people didn't understand why, and I said, well, because if there's ever a need. If there's ever a need regarding, something similar to World War II, or even, you don't know. There's other situations beyond that. And I didn't really go into with any of the people regarding Crystal Lake South as to what I had dealt with in the oceanic waters or the backyard as far as the house in also San Antonio, that was well before then, but in regards of the house in New Jersey and Old Town Presbyterian Church or any of these things. Though these guys had, there was a group of them, I can't remember their name, they're kind of outsiders to Crystal Lake South High School, and they had seen me at IHOP a few times. And they had seen me speaking with some guys in black suits with black ties and white button-down shirts and fedoras. And so a few of them had actually asked me if I knew those guys and what they had to do with I said I hadn't met them before necessarily, though it was as it was, because one of them had seen when one of the guys in the black suits with the black tie and the white button-down shirt had whipped cream and then a bunch of stuff and asked me to tell him what I saw in a different version of scrying. And so they had actually seen me do that. They had also noticed me pick up on a few things as far as the situations at the time. So during the references to the draft, I had said, well, I don't see why there aren't more just open automatic. I don't even know why you have to fill out a card. It should be automatic. As soon as you turn 18 years old, automatic, my opinion. Well, I had informed the recruiter of that, as well as the Master Sergeant, and they were surprised that my opinion was that way, and I had explained the Marine and Science Technology situation with the Navy attachment, how excited I was, and how I could see a very different way as to which one you take in consideration as to the Navy pilot videos, as well as a few other Navy videos that have been released, as well as the formation of the U.S. Space Force. Obviously, NASA has been around a while, as SpaceX has formed, as well as Blue Origin, among a few others. And then whatever the companies are named in reference to the different airplanes that the Navy and or the Air Force may use regarding when the TikTok video, or Tic-Tac, not TikTok, Tic-Tac video, as to the reference regarding the situation as to the Navy air pilot and the Tic-Tac, although the irony of TikTok because of the clock situation. And then if you think about President Ronald Reagan, I think he said something about time, and I can't remember what the time would be. Nonetheless, there is that situation in reference to the war on drugs, and did he reference prescription drugs? Because if there's something in regards of Hollywood in California as to those factors that, ironically, despite my personal issues, mainly because I don't understand it, the pop culture references as to the different celebrities, since that was brought up not just in reference to Woodstock, Illinois, when my biological mother had discussed a female and all those particular factors as to Vietnam, though in other references. So the first movie I got to see when I was awake from my coma, despite how I had wound up off the military installation and all that, went to Blockbuster, and that 50 or 70 year anniversary of The Exorcist, the documentary that was before the actual movie and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure there probably are other situations to take in consideration regarding those factors as to the war on drugs, and does that actually translate to MMJ, or does that actually translate to prescription drugs, since I learned that President Ronald Reagan had been in Hollywood beforehand, and it was a covert sort of way to people who might pay attention to that in comparison to whatever fantasy land regarding Fantasia, as far as that concerned, because of the way that went. I wouldn't be capable to answer in a more detailed way, though I'm sure there are those who actually would be capable to go into further details in those references, especially regarding pop culture. So that recruiter had brought up for the prior 3 to 5 years, there had been an uptick in regards of parents and guardians of children that did not want their children going into the armed forces of the United States of America, various branches and divisions. He and other recruiters that would get together at some sort of conference or some sort of version of a symposium had noticed, because even they have a version of quotas However, they were noticing this uptick, mainly starting the time frame of 1992 and then into 1993. Then there's the World Trade Center and a few other factors. And so there's Homeland Security for a reason, I'm going to guesstimate, other than one or two situations. And so he had brought up that a lot of these students, if they had expressed certain interests, their parents would do these things to try to kibosh it. However, they would still have these different viewpoints. And so he had known that I had attended Old Tenet Presbyterian Church with the facts as to it being used as a hospital during the Revolutionary War. In conjunction to that, as I had explained, General George Washington's private office, which he had understood the joke as to the time frame regarding, yeah, it's also his private latrine, and you're a male, so you know how business gets done sometimes when you go to work together on your own, as far as putting stuff together in the pieces of paper, and And since, sometimes there's potty humor that comes out of the state of New Jersey, bad puns, 2/3 of a pun, I suppose, regarding that. It's okay. I can acknowledge that. It is what it is. And so that's before scuba diving, nonetheless. And so I had brought that up, and he actually got those jokes in comparison to other people in those references. Nonetheless, there were the questions as to, because of whatever the facsimile had said, that was in response to me being in the recruiter's office after I filled out my application. And so then you see through the time frame as, oh, well, there's the don't ask, don't tell, or whatever it is, and then LGBTQP pride and rights and all that sort of stuff, and all those factors. And then as things progressed, so I wonder if this underground situation in regards to whatever this Woodstock is, where they try to, whatever, I don't know what their viewpoints are, whether or not some believe it is what it is. However, my biological mother tried to give some sort of what have you, because again, why couldn't I just be a cheerleader? Why couldn't I just, how dare I not win the Miss Crystal Lake beauty pageant when I hadn't lived in Crystal Lake for over 5 years at the minimum? How dare I? And anybody who has ever heard my biological mother complain about me. So I didn't live in Crystal Lake for even, I don't think it was even a full year. And my biological mother was upset because how dare I not become Miss Crystal Lake? How dare I? How couldn't that have occurred? Other than the facts of not having lived in Crystal Lake for over a year, as far as, or even the minimum, probably 3 to 5 years. But yes, those who have ever heard her complain and or seen, and then there's the reference of Pastor Mackenzie saying in the most politically correct way possible, yeah, your parents were strict. Strict, yeah, they were strict. Yeah, so those who understand this reference, there was a conversation in the car, in the parking lot a few times. And so, because, how that goes with that back area. And so, there's a reference, I can make a joke. I had a memory come back in the year of 2004. As far as, and it wasn't the same type of leather, and it wasn't in the same shape regarding December time frame. Though, you know what? I had this memory come back real quick, and I had to go outside and smoke after that at Grady's.
because I had no words to explain that particular memory that had come back. I should say memories, instantaneously, with just that one instance. Yeah, so I learned that I'm a dominant. Like that, in reference to the lifestyle. That's supposed to be biological adult consenting lifestyle. I realized real quick, instant, and I was gonna do things my way or 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 my way, or whatever I wanted to do as far as being done my way. If it had nothing to do with other people and a lot of stuff, well, it was either gonna be done my way, 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 or I just wasn't gonna do it. So, it's done my way. That's how it gets done, because that's how that gets done. And so, there's my Medal of Honor, our project stuff. And so if there were other people, such as that maybe they needed to read the modern day book, you can find that on my website in the books section as to the link to purchase that. Or you could also read through my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeling.com, mainly from around the time frame of 2019 through 2020 into 2021 regarding a few factors, but mainly 2019 into 2020, and or the modern day book. And so it's a few official YouTube videos of mine where I've gone over a few of those details that you can find in reference to my official YouTube channel. You can subscribe, please do so. That's how that goes. So you can learn certain factors as too. And so there are a few combinations to take into that consideration, because why would there be any etiquette or respect to my Medal of Honor art project if that situation regarding that one email that was broken up to begin with, regarding the email, the way it came through, it was completely broken up. And so I didn't even believe it was a real email anyway, because it was the way it came through. It didn't even make sense for it to come through that way. And so since it was all broken up in different pieces and all that sort of stuff, it just didn't seem legitimate in any capacity. And so, I'm sure there are certain versions of Psycho X's as far as that's concerned, not hypothetical. And so if in certain regards of, then there's those factors. And then why would I believe that my Medal of Honor art project was respected in that capacity if that just so happens to be that way anyway, as far as that's concerned? Because if there were those who maybe they didn't know and or didn't have whatever as far as, no. Very particular about my work. And so in regards of in the non-Medal of Honor art project artwork ways, certain things are done a certain way, and it's not up to other people to choose how that's done at all. And so if in that hypothetical aspect as to Houston, and the irony of ironies, it was an X situation in comparison to the actualities of certain things. Well, if the way it came through in the email that I read was in a different capacity, as well as what I picked up in a few other references, if that was, I believe it was a male, if I remember, well, it was over. Move on. It was over beforehand. Wasn't for to begin with. It's probably something similar to my biological sister, to my dead ex-husband sort of thing. I'm going to guesstimate possibly in certain references. So I'm not certain. I wouldn't know officially I didn't go and get into that sort of stuff. However, as many factors as to what I had already dealt with by that point in time in the state of Texas, I truthfully didn't believe that realistically there was any reason for me to do it anyway. Because my Medal of Honor, our project, is about my Medal of Honor, our project. Yes, there's the attached portions regarding the Dr. Mary Edwards Walker collection attachment, if in the accuracy of, but that's more towards the progression, towards the future in comparison, because there's very few females in regards of the past. And so in journal blog entries of mine, the Ornery PSA, I've gone over, it has to do with the symbol of the Medal of Honor, the spirit of the Medal of Honor. And I've made attempts to explain certain things because it's not in a linear way. It's not linear at all. So while some people might think that there's some sort of way to try to explain it so that way they could try and wish that they could do certain things, no. It is done only certain ways. And while yes, I can explain in some words, it's not even 1/1,000,000th as to how it actually gets done. There's a lot of stuff. So similarly to my scuba diving, there's my childhood, my teenage years, and all those factors. My buck poo, my buck gum, my grandpa Gavin, my babysitter Sunny Sonia, who's from the island of the Dominican Republic. So well before scuba diving, where it's those individuals in regards of the civilian recreational scuba dive area, there's a huge difference in regards of, and again, since it's specifically having to do with the oceanic waters, it's not up for people who learned how to swim in a Gulf area or a pool or a lake or any of those waters as to how that gets done correctly, okay? So while I have done what I could to remain in that composure aspect, and I've been wrongly called a snob a multitude of times, this area, no. I will actually release my actual inner snob when it comes to that, because unless you learned how to swim the way I did in the ocean, as far as the oceanic waters, if you learned how to swim in a pool, you don't have any knowledge of that. If you learned how to swim in a lake or a pond or some freshwater area, in comparison, no, you don't know how that gets done correctly. If you learned how to swim in the Gulf of Mexico, compared to, there are areas I will acknowledge that would actually be in Mexico in comparison to a Gulf Coast state as to how to swim, then you might have a little bit, but in the state of Texas, no, I'm gonna leave that to Allie. I'm gonna guesstimate when it comes to Allie. I know Allie as far as in reference to who's supposed to be on my scuba dive certification, in reference to my cavern scuba certification in comparison, not just an opinion, fact, as to the facts that she was brought in to teach regarding. That was her name that's supposed to be on my scuba diving certification. In comparison, regarding my cavern scuba diving. So, obviously, if in regards of, since Republican, what would that translation be of anybody that would have proudly voted for 44 only because of one particular aspect in comparison. And what would that be as far as a definition is concerned, because of already the stuff regarding the Texas-Mexico situation. So Allie would know as far as certain things, as far as learning how to swim. I'm gonna guesstimate depending on, so if there's kind of like a shape of Maine area-ish, and then that kind of curve regarding, in that shape of Maine area, which would be kind of similar-ish to the whole area regarding from like Staten Island all the way down to South Jersey, in that kind of ish for the, yeah, then you have a different, in comparison to learning how to swim in a pool, or learning how to swim in a lake, or learning how to swim in the Gulf of Mexico along the Gulf Coast states. You cannot even compare as far as that is concerned, and that is not even taking into consideration the other factors as to my background regarding my childhood and my teenage years. So no, as far as other people say. Okay. So while in Austin in the year 2010 and 2011, they thought that I was a snob just because of wearing corsets, I guesstimate they might have something to retract as far as their statements now in that particular consideration. I'm just saying, especially in regards to December 2020 during the Bethlehem Star and those proven facts as to the oceanic waters. Then February and January regarding, or January and February regarding in 2021 and 2022. Huge difference regarding a few things as to the temperature of the water. Comparison. So, just gonna. Nonetheless, thank you for tuning in to my official YouTube channel video. Make sure to like my official YouTube videos and share the link to my official YouTube videos, and go to my website, look around the artwork that I did in regards of, and go look through the links to Amazon to purchase from my books in regards of journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmealing.com, same as www.ladydorybell.com. You guys have a good day. Today, the 2nd of June, 2022. I do apologize, my migraine was just atrocious in regards of, wasn't any headache portion, it was just a pure migraine, unfortunately. And so I'm still doing what I can to deal with it. It's at like a 1 or a 2 in reference to migraine level, and in certain areas of, in regards of, for those who understand neurology, there's other areas that are about a 6 to a 7 regarding headache pain level. Though this is the year of 2022 in comparison to the year of 2000. You guys have a good day. You guys have a good day. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. And again, congratulations, Admiral, in reference to the Coast Guard. And congratulations in reference to the 70-year platinum celebration regarding. It's the 2nd of June, 2022.